Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AIM on MS&T podcast. I'm your host, Kate, and I'm so glad you have joined us today. If you are new here, let's catch you up. AIM stands for Academia, Industry, and Military, which are the sectors that form the foundation of the modeling, simulation, and training community right here in Central Florida. Together, they make up what is known as Team Orlando, a collaborative partnership driving innovation and mission readiness through MS&T. Each episode, we sit down with leaders and innovators within the MS&T world to talk about what's new, what's next, and why it matters, especially to our Team Orlando community. Whether you're deep in the field or just curious about one of Orlando's biggest industries, second only to the theme parks and hospitality industry, we're here to keep you informed, inspired, and part of the conversation. Looking to boost your visibility ahead of major industry events or just get your company's name out there? Team Orlando News just launched its 2026 Spring Advertising Special. Get bonus exposure with packages that include spotlight features, podcast ad reads, and newsletter placements. But hurry, offers are only available for packages purchased by June 1st. Email advertising@teamorlando.org to learn more and secure your spot today. Today, Dale Whittaker joins us from the U.S. Army Capability Program Executive for Simulation, Training, Test, and Threat in Orlando, also known as CPE ST3, which was formerly known as PEO STRI. Mr. Whittaker is the project lead for CPE ST3's International Program Office. Here's more about Mr. Whittaker's background for our listeners. He joined the organization as Program Manager for Foreign Military Sales in November of 2013. Before that, he was the Director of International Programs for the Naval Air Warfare Training Systems Division, NOC-TSD, supporting 50 allied and partner nations with approximately 200 foreign military sales valued at $1 billion. He has over 39 years of military and government service, beginning when he joined the U.S. Marine Corps in October of 1983. He has over 26 years of international and acquisition experience supporting Department of War objectives in building relationships and providing interoperability with our allies and partners. He is Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act DIWA Level 3 certified in Program Management and Business Financial Management. He is a DOW certified Level 3 International Affairs Professional. Mr. Whittaker, a lot of our listeners have no idea your CPE ST3 International Program Office portfolio currently supports 66 countries with over 400 foreign military sales cases valued at $3.5 billion. And with that, let's jump into some questions. My first question for you is, why are foreign military sales important to the U.S. Army?
So foreign military sales for the U.S. Army is it's all about building relationships and partnerships. I mean, look back on the U.S.'s history, 250 going on 251 years. There's not a time or a place to include today that we fought by ourselves and functioned by ourselves. So it's mainly about relationships, building those relationships for the future and with the partners and the allies as you go forward. Obviously, it also helps the industrial base with sales and those things as well. But from an Army perspective, certainly tied into those relationships.
Now, of the 66 countries you support, some are allied countries and others are partner countries. What is the difference between allied and partner nations?
So that's a great question. So allies, think of allies as there is a true treaty in place, a situation. So think about the Five Eyes partners. Think about NATO as an example. Those are allies because there's a treaty in place that says the U.S. will support, vice versa. I use NATO as an easy example because I can use a country that's very close, Ukraine, as a partner. Because if they were a true ally, we would be engaged and involved with what's going on there, right? So we're supporting them from a partner perspective. and making sure they are able to execute and support themselves, but they're not an ally that forces us into a situation that we may not want to be in at the moment. The beautiful thing about the partners are, and the main reason we do a lot of things with partners and not just allies, is because you're also looking for the regional stability and the fact that those partners need to be able to protect themselves and again rebalance in those areas so that we don't end up with undesired conflict. Not that I guess any conflict is desired, but I think you get the point there.
Yeah. Building on that, I would like to take it a step further. CPE ST3 specializes in simulation, training, testing, and adversarial threat emulation. With these capabilities, what kinds of support do you provide our allies and partners?
Well, so actually, obviously, a little more focused on the simulation and those than we are the threat emulation and the test. Mm-hmm. But we do every bit of it for the international partners. It's a matter of the scenario and the requirement that they have and where we're at. But certainly much more focused on the simulation and the delivery of those products and services in those areas than we are so much on the test or the threat emulation. Of course, some of the threat emulation is in any of the simulations that you're delivering as well. So
right.
Certainly plays in from that perspective.
With those relationships in mind, the Army Transformation Initiative is underway, as well as Army Acquisition Reform. How do these efforts affect allied and partner forces?
Well, so I think the transformation for the Army is certainly focused on speed, agility, and get the Army focused where it needs to be in a timely manner. So the same would hold true for those partners and allies in many cases. I mean, if we accelerate the production lines, if we accelerate our contracting timelines and our delivery timelines, we certainly should be able to do that and affect the partners and allies in much that same way and be able to support them in a more expedited manner. So that's probably the easiest and fastest way. Mm-hmm. I think part of the transformation also comes into how we do exports, how we manage those things that, may or may not be critically identified in today's products and services from a U.S. Army perspective, how you build out those program protection plans to be able to deliver those products and services in an expedited manner to those partners. And certainly there's a lot of focus on that with the transformation so that, again, when you're showing up on the battlefield, you've got guys and gals to your right or your left have much the same kit and much the same equipment and can be interoperable and function with you in an expedited manner is a big part of that focus. That'll help the allies and partners.
Following up on that, what steps is the Army taking to accelerate delivery of equipment to its allies and partners?
The steps we're taking is we're certainly, there's a lot of changes in the FAR that's going on with the transformation, and there's changes that are happening from a contracts perspective that allows us to add scope to an existing contract, even though we may not have a true requirement and funding and everything today to be able to support those partners and allies in an expedited manner. So that's one of the ways, as an example, to be able to do those type things. So again, I talked about the contracting piece, but obviously also beyond the contracts and the delivery and the production line planning and execution. We're certainly looking at the logistics side of it for the logistics delivery, the shipping, the delivery in country, and how to expedite movement of equipment as needed for those partners and allies as well.
So, with the expenditure of resources in Iran depleting U.S. assets, won't foreign military sales cause a backup in fielding to our own warfighters?
So, no, I don't see that as a situation that we would be overly concerned about. I would tell you there's a lot of things that happen. I'm involved in some of those meetings when there is determinations made as to whether or not we're going to provide asset A to partner A and how it affects the U.S. stocks and what the numbers are and how we can continue to function and meet our mission first. So we generally will not draw down, certainly with a partner or an ally, to the point that it would affect our ability to defend and execute the current missions. So certainly you read a lot, you hear a lot about some of the concerns with the depletion of U.S. assets and how you're going to rebuild them. But I would tell you again, most places the stockpiles are there, the information is there for the short run anyway, to be able to take care and do the things we need to do.
Can you talk about the history and mission of the International Program Office here in Orlando?
Sure. So, I've been in the International Program Office here within ST3 for right at 13 years. Prior to that, the international mission has always been tied to ST3, PEO STRICOM, PM Trade well before that, and along with the other PMs, PM CAT and others. I know in the 90s, PM CAT had a international cooperative agreement with the UK on a couple of programs as well. The mission has always been there. It's just a matter of how it's been executed, how big it was, and how it was tied in. I would tell you when I got here in 2013, it was more of the Security Assistance Management Directorate mission. I was part of the customer support group out of the front office doing that part of the mission. In 2018, we began to function the way we are now as the project lead, along with the Security Assistance Management Directorate functions, all within one house, all within one. Again, keep me arguing with myself instead of others to execute those missions. My current organization, I have a staff that has the normal things you would see in a staff, your finance team, your business manager, some of the operations team, et cetera, to be able to support across enterprise support that ties into the other PM shops to ensure we know where they're going with their products, their services, and to be able to leverage them and them leverage us appropriately for that buy down of cost and for that interoperability. But then when you get to the execution portion of the mission, I have 3 product leads that are lieutenant colonel equivalents. And those 3 product leads are focused on simulations, certainly one of them on live simulations, a little more focused on what you would generally see as maybe the ground type mission when you start talking about combat training centers, miles equipment, gunnery training systems, and some of those things.
Okay.
You get into a little more of the virtual in some other areas. You certainly pick up some of the aviation stuff and some of the things that we do in the aviation community. So those are where a couple of my product leads are focused. Those 2 product leads, along with the third one, which is train, advise, assist, and mentor. Each one of them have about 4 or 5 IPTs inside of them for a total of about 70 people within the International Programs Office supporting those international partners. That train, advise, assist, and mentor is just what it sounds like. There's some places we're doing some training events, some training things. We do some advising, assisting, mentoring those partners who may or may not have the current capabilities that the U.S. has. So even if they get the product or the service, they may not be able to function in those type manners. So we do some of those. It's a little bit of a catch-all, to be honest with you. It picks up some of the other pieces and parts that those other 2 PDLs aren't specifically focused on and or tied back to the other PM shops and executing those type missions that are tied to those other PM shops. I would tell you along with that, I'm certainly tied into, the network here in Orlando from an international perspective. I think you read up front that I actually was the director of international programs for NOC TSD previously. Mm-hmm. There are places that we partner as part of Team Orlando on the international stuff as well. We got international partners coming to town. There's things that we'll share, things that we'll talk, things that we'll brief together and do some of those things as well, right along with the Marine Corps or the Air Force and others as part of the Team Orlando. And obviously, many times when we have those international partners in town, we'll end up in some of the industry spaces as well as part of that.
That's great. Can you talk about now how foreign military sales provide new opportunities for the U.S. industry?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit a minute ago, right? I mean, when we start talking about critical program information and the fact that we're trying to leverage the domestic product and the domestic deliveries in a much more expedited manner. Those are going to give industry the opportunity to, for lack of a better way of saying it, if you got a production line that you're delivering 20 items, maybe now you're going to deliver 22 or 24 or 30 and be able to expedite those production lines. And quite honestly, it's on industry as well. I mean, I talk about the U.S. looking at the critical program information and putting together program protection plans and making sure we're doing the right things to protect the U.S. technology. But quite frankly, industry has to put forth the effort and the consideration as to how they're going to do those deliveries and export and in future as well.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I challenge, and I've done it at TSIS for several years, I'll challenge industry here to, if you've got a U.S. RFP on your table and you're trying to put together a proposal, you need to be asking the question about the scope and the ceiling and whether or not you can be able to do the things you need to do those deliveries for those international partners in the not too distant future.
Moving on, you are one of 5 Army Security Assistant Management Directors for the Army Security Assistant Enterprise, which provides total lifecycle support to FMS cases. How do these dual roles help you work with allies and partners?
So it's another great question. So, CPE ST3, the artist formerly known as PEO STRI, has never been aligned to a lifecycle management command since it became a PEO, i.e. out of its previous life as STRICOM, which was a lifecycle management command. So for that reason, much like the TAD Support Operation Office does the sustainment and training support across the Army for TADS, I do much that same role for the international partners for the sustainment and writing the cases and managing the cases. So I'd tell you, I'm from a case management, execution, and delivering to partners and allies perspective, I'm more of a one-stop shop than you will find in the rest of the Army, because we write and manage those cases ourselves, execute them here internally to the International Program Office and or within ST3, so that there's not 2, 3, or 4 different organizations involved. And actually, if we go back up a little bit to the conversation about transformation and Army transformation, that's exactly what part of the Army transformation is doing. The PAEs, Portfolio Acquisition Executive, now have an international cooperation office as part of the overarching PAE that is now, in theory, a one-stop shop for that PAE to be able to support across the CPEs and be able to drive that same capability to the partners and allies through that one-stop shop. So certainly from that perspective, it helps.
Yeah.
Internally to the Army, I'm on the USASAC leadership's team's staff as well as DASADEC to be able to execute those type missions. DASADEC, Assistant Secretary of the Army for Defense, Export, and Cooperation. So with me being tied into both of those as well, and back to ST3, obviously, it certainly helps to simplify the process and the overall management and execution of those cases for the allies and partners. I jokingly talk about, unlike other organizations, I only have to argue with myself to figure out the timelines and the execution, right?
You also co-chair the Modeling, Instrumentation, and Simulation for Training Working Group, MIST, working with Five Eyes partner nations. What is Five Eyes, and how does MIST help partner nations?
Yeah, so the Five Eyes is a intel agreement between the 5 English-speaking nations, essentially the U.S., the U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So those 5 partners, we have that working group to ensure we have the interoperability, the releasability, the things we need to do to be able to partner with them, show up at a CTC and run real-time training instead of spending days or weeks putting that equipment together to be able to execute a training event, etc. So the real idea behind the MIST working group is just that those Five Eyes partners are having the conversation on a daily, regular basis to make sure that we don't write a requirement or come up with it's a technical solution to a requirement that is diverged, because most of the time your requirement is going to look very much the same, but it's the technical solution that may end up being uniquely different. So I think it's fairly well known within the community that Miles equipment, as an example, has had some issues being interoperable across the nations. So those are the type things we're trying to address, setting some standards and making sure that codes, timing, etc., is real time to be able to meet those needs. And of course, how that plays out beyond those allies is for the partners the same way as we build out combat training centers in other parts of the world and have that Miles type equipment or live training equipment. We can show up, they can show up and execute real time by spending time putting the exercise together.
Now, you were in London recently to participate in the International Training Technology Exhibition and Conference. These were allies and partners from around the world focused on training technology-empowered forces. What are your takeaways from the conference?
Well, so I think just like the rest of us are seeing, one of the big takeaways from the conference is technology is changing rapidly, right?
Yeah.
And how we fight wars and how we do things are changing very quickly. I mean, think about the drone scenario. How up until a few years ago, how much focus was really on drones and how those things would affect the battlefield. So there's a lot of conversation about those type technologies, the technologies that are changing rapidly, and how we address those disconnects, or more importantly, how we see forward and what technology, what solution sets, what should we be addressing now or thinking about now, not just from a product solution perspective, but the theory and how you're going to get to the theory and how you're going to execute those things in the future to be able to help the U.S. allies and partners win in an extremely, if possible, unfair fight for the U.S. side to take that advantage to the battlefield, right? So kind of those are some of the big takeaways there.
One question we always like to leave our listeners with is, what advice would you offer someone who is considering going into a similar career path as you? In particular, what would you tell someone that you wish someone had told you when you were deciding your future career?
Wow. So that's a great question, and I hadn't thought about that one very much, to be honest. I still don't know when I want to be when I grow up, so I'm not sure I can answer the last part of that. But I think for those that are around that know me, I think the mission I have and the mission that we support is one of the most important missions within ST3 and within the Army. And being a Marine, I would tell you that part of the reason I say that is for every dollar I can get a partner to spend, and for every one of those that I can get trained and on the front line is one less of our mother, brother, daughter, sisters, etc., that we need to worry about coming back maimed or concerned. So that's part of the reason that I enjoy the mission, and I'm very focused on it. Been doing it for 26 years for some of those reasons. I would tell you, I think question-wise is if I was going to tell somebody to ask the question and try and figure it out, it would certainly be, what are your personal goals? I mean, the attaboys, the top 10% of organizations, et cetera, in many cases aren't generally looked at from an international perspective because, quite frankly, we Americans are very focused on ourselves many times and not externally, and that holds true in industry and organizations in the U.S. Army, et cetera. Maybe not quite as much because we are worried about those partnerships and relationships and stuff, but you got to be able to accept those things and recognize that those, for many of your peers and coworkers, may not be quite as focused on that type mission And so they may not see the value in it that you see. So you got a little bit as your self-value and self-importance of making sure those things are executed in a timely manner.
That's true. Now, before we sign off, where should our listeners go to find out more about CPE ST3?
You can go to the external website. We have a Facebook page, and we are on LinkedIn. So you can certainly go to any one of those three areas and learn more about it. You're certainly more than welcome to give me a call, or I'm sure our PAO would also more than welcome calls and emails to be able to help support any of those type questions.
And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Whittaker for joining us here today. That's a wrap on this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Want to stay in the loop on what's happening in the modeling and simulation and Team Orlando communities? Head to teamorlando.org and follow us on LinkedIn, X, and Facebook for all the latest updates and upcoming events. If you're looking to spotlight your organization or share your voice on AIM on MS&T, sponsorship and guest opportunities are available. Contact us. The information will be in the description. Don't forget to follow AIM on MS&T on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye!